The verb doler means to hurt, not in the sense of I'm going to hurt you, but in the sense of my head hurts, my stomach hurts, and so forth. Doler is a little bit tricky to use because it requires what we call indirect object pronouns. That's because if something hurts, it has to be hurting someone. So we have to have a word there to tell us who it is that is being hurt. Doler is also a little bit tricky because it's a stem-changing verb. We're going to talk about all of those things and show how to use the verb doler to talk about something hurting. Here are the forms of doler. Like I said, it is a stem changer, an OTUE stem changer, but this is actually more theoretical than practical because we're always going to be talking about my head hurting or my feet hurting or whatever. We're never going to use the first or second person forms of the verb. We're always going to use the third person forms of the verb. So these are the only ones that we're actually interested in, even though technically these would also be forms of the verb doler. It's important to keep in mind, if we're talking about something hurting, that it is that body part that's the subject of the sentence. So in the sentence, my stomach hurts, for instance, the subject is stomach. Again, that's third person. We could say it, which is third person. That's going to be our subject. Stomach, of course, is singular, so we would use the third person singular form of the verb doler, which, as we saw a minute ago, is duele. So that's going to be our conjugated verb that we'll use in this sentence. The word for stomach is estómago, and in Spanish, when we talk about body parts, we actually say the stomach, the feet, and so forth, instead of saying my stomach or my feet like we do in English. So we're going to say el estómago duele, but as I mentioned before, we have to say who it is that hurts, especially since we don't have my here. Right now, this just means the stomach hurts, and we don't know who the stomach is hurting. We don't know whose stomach it is. So we have to have a word to tell us who it is that the stomach hurts. To do that, we're going to have to use indirect object pronouns. And since you may or may not be familiar with indirect object pronouns, I'm going to talk about those really quickly. Indirect object pronouns are used to indicate to us who it is that's at the receiving end of an action. In this case, the action is to hurt, so these are going to tell us who it is that is being hurt. Here are the indirect object pronouns on the chart. So we can see that if I am being hurt, then we're going to use the indirect object pronoun me. If you are being hurt, we'll use te. If it's he or she, or usted, we would use le. If we are being hurt, we would use nos. If we were talking about vosotros in Spain, we would use os. And if we're talking about them or you all, we would use les. So there's our chart for that. In this case, we are saying that I am the one that is being hurt. So we would use me. El estómago me duele. We could rewrite that to make it look a little nicer, like a complete sentence. El estómago me duele. So our subject again is el estómago. The verb has to agree with the subject. That's why we have the third person singular form, duele. And the me tells us who it is that is being hurt. Let's look at some other examples. My feet hurt. Feet is los pies. So again, third person, like I said, we'll always use a third person form of doler. But this time it's plural, so that would be duelen. But so far our sentence just says the feet hurt. It's not telling us who is being hurt by the feet. So we have to have that. Again, it is my feet. I'm the one who is feeling pain from my feet. So again, we would use me. But now let's change it up a little bit. Let's stick with feet. But let's say your feet hurt. In this case, feet is still our subject. We still have los pies. We still have our verb that agrees with that, duelen. But now we're talking about you, presumably two. So in that case, we would say los pies te duelen, which literally would mean the feet hurt you. If our feet hurt, we would say los pies nos duelen, the feet hurt us, and so forth. So remember, our verb has to agree with our subject, which in this case is going to be our body part. And the indirect object pronoun tells us who is at the receiving end of the action. So in this case, the action is to hurt. The person that is at the receiving end of that hurting is the person that's being affected by it. And that's what the indirect object pronoun tells us.